On Monday, you will write an essay about chapters 6 through 10, Boy in the Striped Pajamas. We'll talk about the topic in a moment. But first of all, in order to try to help you improve, I want to go backwards and take a look at a really successful essay from the last quiz that we took, which was over chapters 1 through 5. The last one focused on the topic of Bruno's maturity. And so there were very few essays there, but there were a few that scored 10. And this is one of those. And so we'll break it down. But right now, the first thing I want to show you is the structure of this essay. One of the first things you can see, even if you don't read the essay, if you just kind of sit back and defocus your eyes a little bit, you can tell very easily that this essay has 5 paragraphs in it. In class, I asked students, and they immediately said, "Oh, well, this first paragraph up here, that is an introductory paragraph, and this paragraph down here, that's going to be a concluding paragraph, and then those are body paragraphs in the middle." And that's absolutely right. You guys know that stuff already. You guys organize it a slightly different way. I always learned to organize it in a Roman numeral outline. So the introduction would have been Roman numeral 1, and then you would have had your 3 topics, and then Roman numeral 5 would have been the conclusion. By the way, a 5-paragraph essay is a very, very good structure. It'll help you, learning this now will help you in both high school and college. You have learned those 5 items. You just learned it this way. So you have the triangle with the point pointing into the body here, and then you have the 3 body paragraphs, and then you have the upside down triangle here, again pointing into the body, because your thesis statement and your summary, those are basically going to be reflections of what is the body of your paper. So we really need to figure out basically what we're going to be talking about and what's going to be in the body of that paper or of that essay that you have. So this student took a look at the question, at the prompt about his maturity, and said, and you didn't have to answer either direction. And no matter what you answer, whether you said he was young and naive, whether you said he was about right, whether you said he was extra mature for his age, as long as you could support it with evidence, you were fine. This person said, well, he's young and naive, and she identified 3 different basic reasons that she wanted to talk about. One was his inability to process other people's emotions. One was the way he spoke, and one was the fact that he was generally pretty unaware of the things that are going on around him. So the next step here is to take these 3 concepts that we want to talk about and to turn those into sentences. So his inability to process other emotions, and she wrote, one way Bruno shows that he's young and naive for his age is because he cannot understand other people's emotions. She took the one that says the way he speaks, and she turned it into another way Bruno's young and naive, shown by the way he talks. And then the third one, unaware, she focused on father's job and the fact that Bruno didn't know what that was. And so that she turned that one into the final reason he is young and naive is because he does not know the reality of his father's job. So those are our 3 topics. Those are going to be what we talk about in each paragraph. Now we need to take those 3 things before we start. We need to take those 3 things and we want to turn those into a thesis statement, and we want to make a reference to each one of these topics in our thesis statement. And so when we do that, we turn into, and I'm sorry, we're getting a little blocked here down at the bottom. Bruno can be described as young and naive because he can't understand other people's emotion. And you see how the green there, I've highlighted it in green so that you can see the connection. The way he talks, and so that's the reference there, and isn't educated about what his father's job is, and you see that connection there. So you see the answer, young and naive, and then you see in order Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3, Roman numeral 4 reflected in the thesis statement. The next thing we do is we grab that thesis statement and we go way back up to the top and we stick it in for Roman numeral 1, or in your case, what's going to be the triangle. So we'll substitute that right in there. Bruno can be described as young and naive because, and we've been over that. So you see that we've got the green, the blue, and the rose color. The other thing that we can do at this point, we don't have to, but we can, is we can also put a sentence in the conclusion. And that sentence is basically going to be this sentence rewritten. So we want to summarize all our points when we get to the end. We want to summarize all those points, and we can do it by just kind of taking the same major ideas here and rewriting. I would recommend for this writer that she does a better job. Oops, I skipped past. That she does a better job of rewriting that sentence because she has really only changed a few words. You can see from what you see there, very little of it has changed. Has a hard time understanding and can't understand really are the only changes there. I would make this sentence more different from that sentence. But in terms of what we're doing right now, early in the 8th grade year, we're fine. The next thing I want to do is show you how this looks in the essay. We started by looking at this essay and the 5 paragraphs. Well, I really want to focus on the 2, 3, and 4 paragraphs. Here is your Roman numeral 2, your first rectangle, and you see that that green sentence is the first sentence of that paragraph. The blue sentence is the first sentence of the 3rd paragraph. The rose sentence is the first sentence of the 4th paragraph. That helps guide you through those paragraphs because that's all you're talking about in that paragraph is his lack of ability to understand other people's emotions. Then when you go back up to here, and obviously you're going to write it in a slightly different order than this, but you see those 3. So essentially what's happening here is as the reader reads through, they're getting to this main statement of you're saying that he's young and naive because of this, this, and this. And then you go in order through this, this, and this. And at the end, you said basically, not as immaturely as this, but so see, Bruno is young and naive because of this, this, and this. So you're telling them what you're going to tell them, and then you're telling them, and then you're telling them what you told them. That's the structure of this. So that's how it works, or that's how it worked in the last essay. Now we want to move to the next essay. So at this point, I would encourage you to get out a sheet of blank notebook paper and maybe pause the video for a moment and draw your 5 shapes down the right-hand side of the paper. And then we are going to give you things to add into that paper, and this can be used as your scratch paper for the upcoming essay on Monday. You can have this out while you write. And on top of that, I'm going to walk you through, and I'm actually going to give you those 4 sentences that will help you structure yourself for the essay that's coming up. You still have to find all the evidence, and you still have to figure out how you're going to say it, and you have to write it, and you have to make it make sense. But at least for now, we're going to set up the structure so that you have that part in place and could just hang the details that you understand on that essay. And then maybe for the next time, we won't structure it quite as much, and so that by the end, you're actually writing your own essays and you're doing this process on your own first. So the first thing is shapes down the right-hand side. Once you get done with that, then we know that this is your introduction shape, your main point, your main point, your main point, your conclusion. You can label those if you want. You don't have to, but you could label those if you want, if you left yourself enough room. What I'm going to do here then is we're going to define what we're talking about as our main points, and then we're going to come to a decision about what we want our answer to be. The topic of this essay is the women in Bruno's life and how do they feel about this change? How do they feel about father's new position? We know right from the beginning how grandmother feels. In chapter 8, grandmother just goes off on father. She tells him she's ashamed of him. She tells him he's doing horrible things, that the uniform he's wearing represents horrible things, that she wishes she could tear the eyes out of her head rather than see him wear that uniform. So it's pretty clear what grandmother thinks. And that is the most obvious one. And, so I'm going to rank that one as first. Mother is not quite so obvious, and this is for social reasons. Father doesn't have any control over grandmother's life. She lives, on her own. She doesn't rely on him for anything. So grandmother can kind of say her piece. Mother, even though she's theoretically an equal to father, she's not. In a fascist society, as Nazi Germany was, Nazi fascism was built on militarism and misogyny, that the men were the boss. And so certainly somebody who's a high-ranking Nazi official, he is going to be the boss of his household, and he's not going to take any criticism openly from his wife. Mother certainly has some disagreements. We see that as early as chapter 1, where she's been crying, where she goes in and has a little bit of an argument with father, and then father screams at her and shuts the whole thing down. So we know she doesn't just blindly agree with father. In chapter 7, we see her do something that is extremely risky. Pavel is the waiter in the house. Pavel is somebody from the concentration camp that has been brought over to be a servant. And Pavel is a Jew. Pavel is thought of as less than human. So when Bruno falls and Bruno cuts his leg, Pavel, who used to be a doctor, who's trained as a doctor, stitches him up, fixes him. And mother is scared not because she doesn't like Pavel or think Pavel did a good job, but because she's afraid of what's going to happen if somebody finds out that Pavel basically did a little minor surgery on an Aryan German boy, especially the son of the commander of the camp. Pavel is in great danger if anybody finds out. So mother, instead of supporting father's ideals, mother actually goes against those and agrees to take credit for stitching up Bruno rather than letting Bruno take the fall for that, because Pavel could end up in serious trouble. He could be physically punished. He could be even as much as murdered, and nobody would think anything of it because as a Jewish person, he is seen as being less than human by the Nazis. So if he gets murdered, nobody's going to be bothered by that. So mother shows her rebellion, but not as openly as mother. Maria doesn't agree with what father's doing, or at least we have a pretty clear idea of that, but Maria can't say it. As we have in this book, a lot of times we know that they're at Auschwitz. We know that the striped pajamas are prison uniforms. We know the father is a Nazi. We know that Heil Hitler is a salute to Hitler. And even though Bruno doesn't seem to know those things, and that's that concept of dramatic irony where the audience knows more than the character knows. He asks Maria, Bruno asks Maria about father and whether she likes living there and whether, doesn't she disagree just like he does. And for a moment, and I believe this might be on page 58, for a moment she is tempted to say what she really thinks. And then she realizes that if she does that, she could be putting herself out of a job, out of a home, out of what little comfort she has in this world, including regular meals and things like that. If she speaks out against father, father took her in. Father has treated her well because he felt a sense of obligation because her mother assisted his mother for so many years. But Maria is at risk. If she says anything or does anything wrong, she could be let go in a heartbeat. So Maria thinks about what she might say, and we clearly get an idea that it's not good. And then she thinks better of it, and then she says, "Oh, your father's a wonderful man. Your father's a good man." Whatever she says on it's around 58, 59, 60. So we get the clear idea that grandmother doesn't agree, mother doesn't agree, and we have a pretty good sense that Maria doesn't agree. We have to kind of read between the lines and use a little bit of dramatic irony to get there. So it seems that all of the women in Bruno's life disapprove of what father is doing. So we now have the Roman numerals 1, 2, 3, 4, like we did on the other one. We have them as triangle, rectangle, rectangle, rectangle. And now we need to write the sentences. So what we said about grandmother, and this is what we came to the conclusion of, was that grandmother openly disapproves of father's new position. That's something I would definitely make sure you write down on the paper, that sentence. And that can be your topic sentence for your first body paragraph, your second paragraph of the paper. We said mother shows signs that she disagrees with father about some things. And again, that's a sentence you can write there. For Roman numeral 4, or for the third box, Maria has to hide the fact that she disagrees with what father is doing. And so those are your three topic sentences. That's the first sentence of your three middle paragraphs. And then we're going to combine those three ideas. We want to reference to this topic, to this topic, and to this topic. And so we want to reference basically to to grandmother, mother, and Maria. And we can simply say, even though father is proud of his new position, he faces disapproval from grandmother, mother, and Maria. So now you have four sentences already written for Monday's essay. And with those four sentences as they are already written, and bring this in on the piece of paper, because you got to have the piece of paper in order to keep these sentences. And then you are going to be able to write your essay. You're still going to have to do things like come up with an attention getter that goes before the thesis statement. And after this topic sentence, you're going to have to explain what you mean about grandmother openly disagreeing, openly disapproving. And then you're going to have to weave in a couple of little pieces of evidence to help you support that. Same thing with mother. You're going to explain what you know about mother and how we know she's disagreeing with father and the incident with Pavel. And you're going to explain it in your words, and you're just going to support that with a couple of little pieces of evidence. And same thing down here with Maria hiding the fact. That's going to be a little harder to argue or to support, but you need to make sure that you are doing it. You can even maybe look back to earlier paragraphs. And then when you get to the end, you're going to need to rewrite this sentence in a different way to start your conclusion and maybe make a reference back to your attention getter, and the whole thing's going to be done. So, and for this time, I'm giving you lots and lots of structure, and then I'm going to, gradually have you do each of these steps on your own as we move into later essays.